In the latest round of election protests in Moscow, law enforcement did not crack down on demonstrators who took to the streets over the refusal of authorities to register opposition candidates at municipal elections. But observers are hesitant to predict if that trend will continue.
Definitely over the course of past few weeks it was pretty evident that the violence does not pay off because people get more angry after that. They do not scare off anyone, but they just stimulate more protest activity. So I think at least they probably decided to calm it down for a bit and see what happens.
Vladimir Milov himself spent 30 days in a prison cell for live streaming the protests on the YouTube channel and sharing information about one of the rallies a few days before.
To be honest, it was pretty tough because what you have to do is you sit for 30 days in a very small chamber. It's just 15 square meters and it's designated for 4 people. So roughly less than 4 square meters per person.
Most of the opposition leaders were released right before the elections, but others got arrested. After the latest rally, municipal deputy and opposition activist Ilya Azar was detained late at night while smoking outside of his apartment.
We shouldn't be surprised when authoritarian regimes act in an authoritarian manner. What we have seen is a result of a series of miscalculations politically, which to an extent I think reflect, well, 2 things. One is just uncertainty about the future by the elite. The elite is jumpy and therefore they're more likely to panic and overreact. But secondly, of overreach by the sort of security apparatuses and their political allies, who felt that they had the answer to the problem, rather than those namby-pamby political technologists.
Days ahead of the elections, though, opposition politicians in Moscow seem to remain undeterred by the possibility of a further crackdown.
One of the major stories right now is to get it out of Moscow, because we were too narrowly focusing on the Moscow protests, whereas there's a lot happening across the country. I would dare say that the protest mood is stronger in the regions.
More than 2,000 people were detained in the protests ahead of the vote in several regions, mostly in Moscow. The majority of those detained have been released, while others face charges. The protests are the most sustained in Russia in years. Yulia Savchenko, VOA News, Moscow.